He didn't hear the crash so much as he felt it, an impact that punched through the steering wheel and rattled straight into his ribs. For a terrifying instant he thought he had hit a person. His breath caught in his throat, a raw, animal panic firing through him. But then he saw it, the mangled grocery cart wobbling away from his bumper like a crippled metal spider, one wheel spinning uselessly in the air. Rain drizzled down in cold needles, blurring the lines of the parking lot where people had frozen mid-step. A few heads turned. Someone muttered something sharp under their breath. A woman standing by the sliding doors gasped loudly enough that it cut through the storm. And then he saw her, the woman whose card had been declined. The same woman he had handed his last $20 bill to not 15 minutes earlier. She stood in the middle of the parking lot, soaked, stunned, staring at the runaway cart as though she had willed it to attack his car. Her purse hung open, spilling an expensive-looking perfume bottle, a gleaming key fob, 2 lipsticks, several business cards that soaked instantly into the wet concrete. She looked nothing like a person who should need $20, not with a sharp-cut charcoal chute clinging to her body, not with a diamond-studded wristwatch now blinking under the rain like an accusation. But he had seen the way her hands shook inside the store, the way her voice cracked as she whispered, I don't understand. Can you try it again?" The cashier had looked bored, impatient. It's not going through. Do you have another card?" The woman had no other card. And he, Daniel Kahn, single dad, ex-employee of a company that had tossed him out like trash, had stepped forward, heart tight, dignity thinner than paper, and offered, "Hey, I've got it." He didn't know why he did it. Maybe because she looked like she might collapse if someone breathed too hard beside her. Maybe because Miriam always told him, "Baba, kindness comes back like a boomerang." Or maybe because even though he had only $23 left in his wallet, 3 were in coins he hated to count, and the bill felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She had looked at him then, really looked, and something flickered in her expression, something he couldn't decipher. Gratitude? Embarrassment? Recognition? Her eyes lingered a moment too long before she whispered, thank you so much." He'd nodded, said nothing more, paid, walked out of the store with his milk, cereal, and cheap apples, feeling like a man who had just carved a hole in his own lifeboat. And now here she was, standing in the rain, watching a shopping cart she hadn't even touched slam into his car. Daniel stepped out, pulling his jacket over his head against the downpour. "Are you okay?" he called out, almost shouting over the patter of rain. Her eyes snapped to him. For a moment, something like fear twisted in her features. Then it vanished under a practiced, polished expression, like she had put on a mask. I didn't mean to," she stammered. "Someone pushed it. It just rolled." Daniel exhaled slowly. The dent in the bumper wasn't too bad, not compared to everything else wrong in his life. A dent was nothing. "It's fine," he said. "Really?" She swallowed hard. Her hands trembled again, but not with cold, with something else. Guilt, maybe fear, maybe recognition. He frowned. Why did she look at him like she knew him? Like she had seen him somewhere other than aisle 6 of a grocery store? Before he could ask her anything, she bent down quickly, scooping her scattered belongings back into a purse. Her fingers fumbled the cards. The watch on her wrist glinted again. The glint stabbed him straight through memory. He had seen that watch before. He couldn't place it at first, but he knew it, knew the exact curve of the metal, the arrangement of the stones. He knew because he had seen it in the office boardroom, on the wrist of a woman whose name sat high above all others, a woman whose decisions shaped or destroyed hundreds of lives at a time, a woman whose signature was the last thing he saw before losing the job that had fed his daughter. His stomach tightened. No, it couldn't be. The CEO of Haskins and Vale was a powerful woman, untouchable, surrounded by bodyguards and assistants and a wall of privilege. She didn't go grocery shopping alone in the rain. She didn't look like a deer caught in headlights. She didn't need $20 from a stranger. But the watch wasn't common. It was a limited edition piece, a luxury brand worth more than Daniel's car. He stared, mind racing. The woman noticed him looking at her wrist and instantly tugged her sleeve down, hiding the watch. And something inside him iced over. He opened his mouth, but before he could form the question, "I'm sorry," she whispered, stepping back. Thank you again for earlier. I need to go. She ran, not walked, not hurried politely, ran, as though she knew exactly who he was, as though she knew exactly what he had seen. Daniel stood in the rain, his fingers slowly curling into fists. He didn't even process the cold anymore, or the dent in his bumper, or the $20 he'd handed away. All he could see was the face of the CEO who had fired him, cold, elegant, unreachable, and the face of the woman running away from him in a soaked charcoal suit. And they were the same. She had recognized him. That was why she ran. That was why her hands shook inside the store. That was why she'd hidden her watch. Why her eyes lingered too long when he'd helped her pay. The realization hit him so hard his knees nearly buckled. She hadn't been embarrassed by the declined card. She had been terrified of him. Daniel stood frozen for several minutes before he forced himself back into the car. His breath fogged the windshield. The wipers squeaked. And the $20 bill he no longer had felt like a gaping wound inside his pocket. He started the engine, drove home. The road blurred with rain and confusion. Miriam greeted him at the door, sleepy-eyed in her unicorn pajamas, rubbing her nose. "Baba, where's the apples?" He handed her the bag but could barely speak. His mind was stuck on the woman's face. Her fear, her shock, her flight. Miriam tugged his sleeve. "You okay?" He forced a smile. "Just tired." She studied him with the intuition only children possessed, the ability to see through lies adults laid carefully over their emotions. But she didn't press. She never did. She trusted him too much. The guilt of that trust always burned. He tucked her into bed, listened to her soft breaths, kissed her forehead, and closed the door. Then he returned to the living room, dropped onto the sofa, and let the silence crash over him like the rain had. The woman, his ex-CEO, had been using her own credit card. No assistant, no chauffeur, no protection, no polished confidence. Something was wrong. Something big enough to knock a woman of her status off balance. And she had looked at him with something worse than fear. Recognition. Why? He had been nothing to her. Just another employee sliced from the company during restructuring. Except he wasn't arbitrary. He had been fired 2 days after reporting suspicious financial inconsistencies, money transfers he couldn't explain, strange withdrawals, a missing file in the digital logs. He had reported them directly to HR. HR had passed it to upper management. And 3 days later, his job was gone. He had always suspected someone powerful wanted him silenced. He just never thought it could be her. But tonight proved something he didn't know he was missing. She remembered him. She feared him. And her life had spilled onto a grocery store floor without the armor of privilege to protect her. Daniel leaned back, elbows on his knees, feeling the slow, twisting burn of suspicion turning into something uglier, something sharper. Then his phone buzzed. One message. An unknown number. He frowned, opening it. The message was only 5 words. Don't trust her. Not again. His blood turned to ice. He stared at the screen, breath shallow. Not again. Again meant it had already happened. Again meant there was a past he didn't know. Again meant he wasn't dealing with simple coincidence. He was dealing with betrayal. A betrayal he hadn't even discovered yet. The phone buzzed again. Another message. She's already started lying to you. Daniel stared into the dark. His heart pounded. His thoughts spun. And far away, in the rain-drenched memory of a grocery store parking lot, the image of the CEO running from him replayed like a warning. Something was wrong. Something was dangerous. And something was coming for him. Daniel didn't sleep that night. The messages sat on his phone like live wires, humming with danger. Every time he closed his eyes, the scene replayed. The grocery cart slamming into his car, her face as she recognized him, the unmistakable panic rippling through her expression, the frantic way she fled. And the message. Don't trust her. Not again. He read it at least 50 times, searching for subtext, clues, some logical explanation that didn't involve him being dragged into a storm he didn't understand. But logic didn't come. Only dread. Around 3 a.m., when the house was silent except for the hum of the old refrigerator, he finally stood, paced the living room, and stared out the rain-streaked window. The streetlights cast watery halos onto the pavement, distorting the world into a softer, more deceptive version of itself. It made him think of her. The CEO, once untouchable, tonight unraveling. What had happened to her? Why was she shopping alone? Why was her card declined? Why did she run? And who sent those messages? He checked the sender again. Blocked number. No profile picture. No name. Just a void. For a split second, he considered calling the number. But something stopped him. Instinct. Or fear. Or perhaps the knowledge that whoever sent those messages didn't want to be found. He tossed the phone onto the couch and ran both hands through his hair until his scalp tingled. 4 months after being fired, he had tried to let go of the suspicion, tried to convince himself that companies cut people all the time, that he wasn't special, that it had nothing to do with the report he'd filed about the missing money trail. But the timing had never sat right, and the way HR avoided his calls afterward, and the way his login was disabled hours after his meeting with the CFO, and the way his security badge stopped working the next morning. Now, after seeing her tonight, it all twisted together into a knot in his stomach. Maybe she hadn't just recognized him. Maybe she hadn't run because of embarrassment. Maybe she had something to hide. And maybe someone else knew it. Someone who had his number. Someone who thought he needed protecting. Oh, warning. When morning finally crept in, pale and heavy-eyed, Daniel made breakfast for Miriam, toast and boiled eggs. She swung her feet under the table, humming a cartoon-themed song, oblivious to the storm brewing in his mind. Between bites, she leaned forward. "Baba, why you look like you didn't sleep?" He forced a smile. "Just thinking a lot." "About work again?" she asked softly. His heart snapped in half in the simplest, quietest way. "Yeah," he murmured. "Something like that." When he dropped her at school, her backpack bouncing behind her, she turned and waved. "Love you." "Love you, too," he said, but the words tasted like guilt, because he didn't know what danger he might be pulling into their lives. Not yet. On the drive back, he replayed every detail of last night, searching for anything he'd overlooked, anything that could explain the messages or her behavior. And then it struck him. Her eyes. Not fear. Recognition. But also something else. Shock. Not the shock of seeing someone she once fired. The shock of seeing someone she thought she'd erased. His pulse hammered. What if his firing wasn't just retaliation? What if it was cover-up? What if she thought he knew something? What if she thought he still had it? He parked outside his small rental home and sat in the car, staring at the cracked dashboard. There was one way to find out. He grabbed his old work laptop. It didn't turn on. Not surprising. IT had bricked it years ago. But he wasn't after the laptop. He was after the USB drive taped under it, the one he'd hidden there out of paranoia the night before he was fired. A drive containing the report he'd written, the numbers he'd flagged, the strange transfers he'd identified. He'd made a backup just in case, never believing he'd need it. He peeled the tape, pulled out the drive, and held it between his fingers. It felt radioactive now. Someone had sent him a warning. Someone knew. And someone else was scared of him digging again. He opened his personal laptop, plugged the drive in, and waited. Nothing happened. The drive was empty. His breath caught. Empty. Not corrupted. Not unreadable. Just blank. A blank drive meant someone had wiped it, which made no sense. He had never plugged it into anything else since hiding it. His stomach turned. Someone had accessed it. Someone had erased it. Not again. The words from the message slammed into him. Not again. She's already lying to you. His throat tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone was orchestrating something around him, and he was late to the game. His phone buzzed. His hand shook as he picked it up. A new message. Check your doorstep. His chest constricted. He stewed slowly, every muscle tense, half expecting to find something dangerous waiting outside. But when he opened the front door, there was nothing alarming, just a small cardboard envelope lying flat against the mat. No return address. No markings. No name. He didn't want to touch it, but he also couldn't leave it. With a breath he didn't feel fully, he picked up the envelope, went inside, locked the door behind him, and placed the package on the dining table. His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single printed photo. His heart stopped. The photo showed him, blurry but unmistakable, in the grocery store last night, standing behind her with a $20 bill in his hand. But the angle didn't make sense. It wasn't from the store camera. It was from someone standing there. Someone taking the picture. Someone who had been watching him. He flipped the photo over. On the back, written in black ink, were 2 words. She knows. The room spun. She knows what? He whispered into the silence. As if responding, his phone buzzed again. Another message. Meet me. 8 p.m. Pier 19. Come alone. He stared at the screen. He didn't know the sender. He didn't know the motive. But he knew one thing. Whoever this was, they were tied to her. And whoever this was, they were watching him. His instinct screamed to delete the messages, to burn the envelope, to ignore every sign of danger. But there was something else under the fear. Something sharper. Anger for the job he'd lost, for the lies he'd suspected, for the life he'd been forced to rebuild from nothing, for the fear in her eyes that mirrored secrets she'd buried years ago. He needed answers, even if they hurt, even if they scared him, even if they ruined everything he had left. He spent the rest of the day on edge, checking the windows, checking his phone, checking the street for unfamiliar cars. Every sound felt magnified, every shadow suspicious. And yet, beneath the anxiety, determination coiled inside him like a tightened spring. When he picked up Miriam from school, she talked about her art project. He nodded, smiled, tried to be present, but the weight of the envelope on his table burned the back of his mind. When he dropped her off with his sister for the night, a spontaneous sleepover, she hugged him tightly. "Baba, you'll be okay." His voice almost broke. "Always," he whispered. He wasn't sure anymore. The sky was ink black when he arrived at Pier 19. The wind clawed at his jacket. The waves slapped against the wooden posts in angry bursts. Dim yellow lights flickered along the walkway, making every shadow dance. No people, no cars, no movement, just loneliness and cold air. And then he saw her, a figure standing at the edge of the pier. She wore a hooded coat, soaked from the mist. Her hands were shoved deep in her pockets. The stance was familiar enough to strike him like a blow. It was her, the CEO, the woman whose card he'd paid for, the woman who'd run from him, the woman who'd fired him, the woman who knew something he didn't. She turned slowly, the wind peeling the hood back, revealing her face, pale, tense, haunted. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Daniel, we need to talk." For a few seconds, Daniel couldn't make himself move. The cold wind whipped against his jacket. The waves thrashed against the pillars beneath the pier, but all he could hear was his pulse banging against the inside of his skull. She stood there, drenched, trembling, her breath rising in uneven clouds, like a woman who had finally run out of places to hide. "Daniel," she said again, voice shaking. "Please, just listen." He didn't step closer. "Not yet. You sent those messages?" he asked, eyes pinned to hers. Her brows knit. "Messages? No, I didn't." "Don't lie to me," he snapped, his voice breaking in half. "Not again." She flinched. For a moment, she looked almost offended. Then a different expression slid across her face, something like resignation, sharp and unsettling. "Daniel, I swear to you," she whispered, "I didn't send you anything." He didn't trust her, couldn't trust her. She had stripped his life clean with a signature, left him drowning without a second thought. And now she claimed innocence? He took a single step forward. "Why did you run last night?" She wrapped her arms around herself as though holding her bones together. "Because I wasn't supposed to see you again." He stiffened. "Not supposed to? Why?" She hesitated, looked away, then back at him with eyes full of something he couldn't decipher. Fear, guilt, grief, regret, all tangled together. "I fired you," she said softly, painfully, 2 years ago, and you were never meant to know the truth behind it. His nails dug into his palms. "Then tell me now." She inhaled sharply, like the cold air physically hurt her. "I didn't want to fire you," she said. "I fought against it. But the board, someone on the board, insisted. They said you were a risk." "A risk," he repeated, biting down on the fury rising in him. Because I reported something suspicious. His voice edged dangerously close to rage. Because I did my job. No, she whispered. Because you discovered something you were not supposed to see. The waves roared below them, as though the ocean itself recoiled. Daniel stepped closer despite himself. Discovered what? Those financial inconsistencies. The missing file. She looked shocked. You remember that? How could I forget? His voice cracked. I lost my job 2 days after filing the report. Her lips parted, trembling. Daniel, that report was never supposed to reach me. He frowned. What are you talking about? I never saw it, she said, her voice lowering to nearly nothing. The CFO intercepted it. So did the head of HR. They told me the allegations came from a different department. They told me the analyst responsible had already been handled. Handled? Daniel repeated, the word scraping through him like broken glass. That's a word they used. She nodded, shame written across her features. Daniel swallowed hard. The cold air suddenly felt thin, suffocating. Why didn't you verify? He demanded. Why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you check the logs, the sender, anything? Her voice cracked. Because they told me you had already been escorted out for misconduct. The world tilted. Misconduct, he repeated slowly. What misconduct? They said you accessed restricted files. They said you were covering your tracks. They said you were unstable. He took 2 steps back, as if struck. Unstable, he whispered. They called me unstable. She nodded. The air in his lungs turned to ice. My daughter, he whispered. We lost everything because of that lie. Everything. Her face twisted with pain. I know. I didn't. Daniel, I didn't know it was you. They never gave me the name. I only learned everything months later when the internal audit began. But by then what? His voice shook violently. By then I was already gone, homeless for a month, working 3 part-time jobs, struggling to feed my kid. Tears filled her eyes. Daniel. No, he snapped, stepping forward again. You should have checked. You were the CEO. You had the power to ruin lives. You ruined mine, and you took someone else's word without question. I trusted the wrong people, she whispered, and I paid for it. A gust of wind shoved through the pier, rattling the old wooden planks. She hugged herself tighter, trembling harder. Then she said something he didn't expect. I'm not the CEO anymore. Silence dropped like a stone between them. He blinked. What? I was removed 3 weeks ago, she said. The board forced me out. The CFO, he took over. Daniel stayed as understanding trickled into him like poison. The same CFO who forced you to fire me, he whispered. She nodded. And the card last night, he said slowly. The panic, the way you ran. My accounts are frozen, she confessed. My assets seized. The board is launching a full inquiry and someone is trying to frame me. So you're in trouble, he said bitterly, and you think I'll feel sympathy. No, she whispered. I think you deserve to know the truth. All of it. She took a shaky step closer. Daniel, someone used your report. Someone used your findings. They built their entire scheme around it. They used your discovery to steal millions from the company, and then they made it look like the whistleblower was me. He felt winded. Wait, he rasped. What are you saying? I'm saying the CFO and HR head were behind the siphoning. They used your flag data as their blueprint. And when you reported it, they erased you, fired you, silenced you. And when it got too big, they pinned everything on me. Daniel stared at her, brain trying to stitch her words into something coherent, something believable. You're saying, he whispered, the same people who destroyed my life also destroyed yours. A tear slid down her cheek. Yes. He didn't speak for a minute. Couldn't. His mind churned, chaotic and sharp, like gears grinding without oil. Then why did someone message me? He finally asked. Why warn me about you? Fear flickered in her eyes. Because someone doesn't want us talking, she said. Someone is watching both of us. You expect me to believe, he whispered, That we're on the same side? Her voice trembled. We both trusted the wrong people. The lines of her face, once hardened by authority, looked broken now, fragile, almost human. He opened his mouth to respond, but a sound split the air. A click. Metal. Sharp. Cold. A gun being cocked. Daniel froze. She froze. The sound came from the far end of the pier. Someone stepped out of the shadows. Tall. Hooded. Face hidden. He raised a gun toward them. Daniel's breath died in his throat. The man spoke in a calm, chilling voice. You weren't supposed to meet. Daniel instinctively stepped in front of her. His body moved before his mind could process. The man tilted his head slightly. How touching, he said with a smirk audible in his voice. Protecting the woman who ruined you. Daniel tightened his jaw. Who are you? The man laughed a little. Someone cleaning up loose ends. She gasped softly behind Daniel. No, no, please. The man fired. Once. The sound cracked through the air. She screamed his name. Daniel staggered. Pain exploded through his shoulder like fire ripping muscle apart. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the wooden planks, blood spilling warm along his arm. Her voice broke into a sob. Daniel. He tried to speak. Couldn't. His throat seized. The man lowered the gun slightly, turning to her. You're next. Her cry tore through the night. But before he could fire again, the distant sound of footsteps, running, echoed down the pier. The gunman paused, swore under his breath, then disappeared into the shadows as fast as he'd appeared. Daniel forced breath into his lungs, dizziness swallowing him whole. She fell to her knees beside him, pressing her hands against the wound, shaking uncontrollably. Stay with me, she cried. Please, please, Daniel, stay with me. His vision blurred. Her face hovered above him, terrified, soaked, desperate. And in that fading moment, just before consciousness slipped away, he realized something unmistakable. She wasn't lying now. She was terrified of losing him, and someone wanted both of them dead. Daniel woke to the sound of beeping. Slow, steady. A scraping dryness in his throat made him swallow, but even that small movement sent a spike of pain through his shoulder. He winced. For a moment, he didn't recognize where he was. The world around him was blurred, too white, too bright. The ceiling lights glowed like halos, turning his vision into slow-moving clouds. Then he heard a voice. Daniel, hey, you awake. Her voice, soft, frayed, barely holding itself together. He blinked until her face sharpened into focus. She sat beside him, her hair tangled, eyes red-rimmed, clothes rumpled from hours, maybe days, of waiting. Her hand hovered near his, as if afraid to touch him without permission. He tried speaking, but his throat refused. She leaned forward quickly, holding a plastic cup with a straw toward him. Small sips, she whispered. The water tasted like metal, but the relief was immediate. When he pulled away, she exhaled shakily, as if releasing a breath she'd been holding since the pier. You scared me, she whispered. He stared at her. I thought I died. Her mouth trembled. You almost did. He closed his eyes briefly, the memory flooding back. The pier, the gunshot, the explosion of pain. The hooded man's voice. The threat, and then darkness swallowing him. He forced his eyes open again. How? How did I get here? She swallowed. Someone saw the shooter running and called the police. By the time they reached us, you were unconscious. Her voice hitched. I thought I'd lose you right there. He frowned, letting her words settle. Lose him? It felt strange, hearing that from the woman who had once signed away his livelihood. How long? He asked. 2 days, she said softly. You lost a lot of blood. His breath caught. 2 days. His daughter. Miriam, he whispered. Where's my? She's safe, she said quickly. Your sister's been visiting every day. She's fine. She knows you're okay. Relief washed through him, heavy and overwhelming. He sank back against the pillow. The pain pulsed, but beneath that was a heavier ache of confusion, a betrayal of unanswered questions. You stayed? He murmured. She nodded without hesitation. I wasn't leaving. He studied her face. Tired, haunted, but earnest. Too earnest. Something felt off. Why? He asked. Why do you care now? She flinched at the question, her gaze dropping before she slowly looked up again. Because everything you suspected, everything you reported, everything that happened to you, her voice broke. It's worse than you know. He stared. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Daniel, the man who shot you, he wasn't after us. He was after you. He blinked. Me. She nodded. You were the first person to discover the pattern. The transfers, the ghost accounts. You didn't just stumble on evidence. You got close. Too close. And when you reported it, you became a threat. His pulse quickened, not from pain this time, but from dread. So the CFO, he orchestrated everything, she whispered, with ours help, and maybe others too. They needed you gone, silenced. He swallowed hard. And you? She closed her eyes for a moment as if the question stabbed her. They used me, she whispered. They used my signature, my trust, my authority, and when it was time to clean house, they made it look like I was a mastermind. Daniel stared up at the ceiling, jaw tightening. Rage simmered under his skin like a slow burn. Rage not only at what had been done to him, but at the layers of deception wrapped around everything he thought he knew. And the messages, he asked. The warnings. She shook her head. I told you, they weren't from me. Then who? He asked. Her silence was sharp and telling. She didn't know, or she wasn't sure, or she was afraid. He could see it. She was still hiding something. A truth she hadn't worked up the courage to speak. Tell me everything, he said, voice low. She drew a trembling breath. The CFO, Conrad, has been building the scheme for years. He laundered money through shell accounts, disguised transfers, fake vendor payouts, all in small enough amounts to go unnoticed. But your report exposed the one mistake he made. A duplicate transfer, 2 identical timestamps. Daniel nodded slowly. He remembered it perfectly. He'd stared at those numbers for hours, feeling something wrong behind them. You flagged it, she continued. And Conrad freaked out. HR helped him bury it. Nina would do anything for him. She's been in love with him for years. Daniel almost laughed, the sound bitter and humorless. So they framed me, he said. She nodded. And when the audit started digging too close, Conrad panicked again. So he framed me next. The board believed it. I got pushed out, my assets frozen, security access revoked. I lost everything. He stared at her. So we're both ruined, he said quietly. Her eyes glistened. Because we were both telling the truth. Silence stretched between them, raw, heavy, suffocating. Then she reached into her bag with trembling hands. I wanted to show you this. She pulled out a phone, not hers, a different model, older, cracked along the edge. She unlocked it and handed it to him. What is this? He asked. Conrad's burner, she said. His heart thudded. How did you get this? He asked. He dropped it, she said, 2 weeks before I was fired. He didn't realize. I kept it. I thought it was nothing, until last night. Daniel scrolled. Messages, transfers, photos, emails, blueprints of the entire fraud. And then, the picture, the one he'd received in the envelope, of him handing her the $20 in the grocery store, sent from the burner. Daniel's veins went cold. He's been watching you, she whispered. Another photo. Daniel at Miriam's school drop-off. Another. Daniel entering his sister's house. Another. Daniel walking into the grocery store the night he saw her. He felt sick. He was going to kill you, she said, to erase the last loose thread. Daniel stared at the images, hands shaking with rage and horror. He looked up sharply. We need to take this to the police. She clasped his wrist gently. We can't. Why? Because the person who sent you the warnings, whoever they are still in the company, still connected, and we don't know who to trust yet. He hesitated. Then who do we turn to? Her voice softened. You. He blinked, startled. "You're the only one who can make sense of this," she whispered. "You were the first to see the pattern. You understand the numbers better than anyone." He didn't respond. "Couldn't. You can help expose him," she said. "You can clear both our names." He stared at the screen, at the damning evidence glowing back at him. He had wanted justice for 2 years. This was a door, a dangerous one, a bloody one, but a door nonetheless. He exhaled, slowly. Then the hospital room door opened. His sister walked in. And Miriam. His daughter saw him, awake, and her face lit up with pure, unfiltered love. She ran to the bed, climbed up gently, wrapped her arms around his uninjured side, and pressed her cheek to his chest. "Baba," she whispered, on the verge of tears, "don't ever scare me again." His eyes stung. He held her carefully, burying his face in her hair as everything inside him cracked and rue-lined. When she finally pulled back, his sister guided her to the corner of the room with a coloring book. He turned back to the woman who ruined him, and who had nearly been killed beside him. "After this," he said quietly, "I don't want anything to do with you." Her breath hitched. "But," he continued, holding the phone, "I'll help take him down." A tear streaked down her cheek, but she didn't hide it this time. She nodded silently. He swallowed hard. "What's our first step?" She hesitated. "Finding the person who sent you the warnings." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new message. Unknown number. "He knows she gave you the phone." Daniel's blood froze. Another message instantly followed. "They're coming for you. Both of you." He looked up sharply. She had gone pale. He tried to stand, pain searing through him, but another message arrived before he could move. "Run." Behind him, out in the hallway, footsteps approached. Heavy, deliberate. Then, a gunshot cracked through the hospital corridor. Screams erupted. Miriam cried out in fear. Daniel grabbed her, shielding her with his body as glass shattered somewhere nearby. The door handle snapped violently, someone trying to break in. His heartbeat roared in his ears. Another message flashed. "It's Nina, the head of HR, the one who helped frame him, the one who helped steal millions, the one who was in love with Conrad, the one who knew everything, the one who had nothing left to lose." The woman outside the door. Daniel looked at the woman beside him, terrified, breath trembling. Her eyes widened. "Daniel," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. All of this, everything, it's my fault." The door slammed again. Daniel pulled Miriam tighter. The final message appeared. "This ends tonight.